Stephen here, Coping 20, formerly Coping with COVID. This is the only show on Facebook and YouTube where in about 20 minutes or less an episode, we're going to figure out together how we're going to stay as positive and as present and as safe during coronavirus times. Now, I'm very, very excited for this episode. I know it's been a while since we've done one, but we're going to come back strong, and this is going to be something that everybody should want to hear. So my guest today is Scott, and Scott is the Director of Marketing for Ball Chain Manufacturing in New York. Now, Ball Chain Manufacturing has a division called Bonafide Masks, and let me tell you, they are your key, your best bet, your go-to, your one-stop shop to get one of the best, if not the best, and certainly the most legitimate KN95 respirator masks that you can get at a very affordable price. And I want Scott to introduce himself and the company that he works for, and we're going to have a discussion about why this is going to solve many problems that you're having right now. So Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, and of course, bonafidemask.com.
All right, well, first, thank you for having me here. Like you said, I'm the Director of Marketing for Ball Chain Manufacturing. So we'll start, high level. Ball Chain Manufacturing, it's a family-owned and operated company, still is, been around since 1938. The main thing that we're most known for is the iconic dog tag chain that the U.S. military wears around their neck, holds the dog tags. We've been making that for them for decades upon decades. It's just one of those products that you see kind of in just everywhere in everyday life. And until you've worked here, you actually never notice it. It's kind of like how when you get a new car, you start seeing the new car everywhere. But because of that and history with the company, we have a lot of connections, a lot of supply chains. And one day at the start of the pandemic, my boss, Bill Tobner, got a call from a community leader basically saying that the hospitals in the area, in the New York City tri-state area, were basically, they were struggling. They were struggling trying to get masks, any sort of PPE. My boss at first kind of responded, we make chain. I don't think, we can make masks. That's a big leap to try to go from making metal products into making fabric products. But, he sat on it for a while and realized, you want to know what? I'm going to see what a lot of our partner factories can do, and just reached out through our supply chains to all of our folks overseas, basically trying to see what we could do, what legitimate products that we could get in to, help a lot of these hospitals and healthcare facilities that were in really, really bad shape, especially back in April, end of March, as everyone can kind of remember. All the images coming across CNN of, New York City hospitals, because we're on the border of New York City. Our factory has been on the border here for, like I said, since 1938, still here. Mm-hmm. So we were able to. That's when we started bringing in about 500,000 to 1 million masks a week. And then directly from our own loading dock and own warehouse and own trucks, started bringing them in, literally checking them, QCing them, and everything going straight out the door. And we were doing that for about solely until, mid-April, end of probably beginning of May, where we felt that we had enough product coming in that we would be able to start offering it out to the general public, as well as just healthcare facilities, hospitals, government, et cetera, et cetera. And then thus, Bonafide Masks was born.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. So KN95 is, first of all, a lot of people ask, what is KN95? How is it different from N95? Well, both of them are a rated, certified type of respirator. N95 is given that rating going through rigorous testing by NIOSH, okay, which connects directly to OSHA for use in healthcare settings when there's mandatory respirator use, as well as industrial settings in this country. Whereas KN95 is the Chinese government standard, and it is very, very similar. The 95 refers to capturing 95% at minimum of particles down to 0.3 microns, which is universally recognized as the most penetrating particle. So can be very scientific, but the basic of it is that if you can test it at that size, it's good to go. So that's what everybody tends to use. Now, KN95 is a very similar standard, and it's equivalent for all intents and purposes. There are some differences, such as the allowance of different pressure drop, but as far as protecting you, it is equivalent. But let me tell you, there's been a lot of news stories and a lot of reports online, YouTube, etc. People talking about fake KN95 masks, and a lot of people, we're still staying at home more, and people's plants by the window, they're dying. Okay, they're getting sunlight, but they're dying because people are forgetting to water their plants because they're taking their KN95 masks that they get and they're filling them with water. Why are people doing this?
So it's become very commonplace, not just for masks, but for a lot of things on the internet. And it's basically just people creating content, whether they're bad actors and they have, motives to try to get rid of counterfeit products, whatever it is, and they're just pushing it out onto the internet, making it look good and passing it off as being legitimate scientific tests, where the one you're talking about has zero bearing on any filtration aspect of a KN95 or an N95. NIOSH, even if you had a standard N95, will not hold water unless it is what's known as a surgical N95, which is an FDA approved mask. So when people do that, and we've had this conversation so many times over the course of, since April, where people call wondering about the water, why is there water coming through? And, it's not a valid scientific test.
It's not a valid test. So that is something that I want to explicitly get your end of that, being a distributor, but I'm also going to tell you, this is not just one person, okay? There's people doing this on YouTube, they're talking about it, they're also demonstrating it. There's also websites that have articles, but it's not official news articles. It's sort of a website that seems to also be selling some masks. So what I want people to understand is that there's 3 tests, I'll use air quotes, that people generally do. And they're not really testing what you think that they're testing. So first of all, with the water, okay? Now it is true that a respirator mask should have a level of water resistance, right? And the one that you guys are selling, which we will introduce in a moment, which is Guangzhou PowerCom Labor Insurance Supplies KN95 mask, does have a water resistant layer, okay? Sometimes the configuration layers are different. Theirs is on the outside, which is a good place to put it. From my own examination and informal evaluation of this, I noticed that water resistant layer is on the outside. So if somebody were to invert the mask and fill it with water, not that you should do that because this is not something that's actually going to tell you anything, as we're going to explain here, it actually will hold the water. But that test is more of a way to look at, is something a genuine surgical mask. So surgical masks, a lot of people are using masks that look like surgical masks, but they're really not. Yeah, and a surgical mask also is something that goes through, in this country, an approval process. It doesn't have as many implications as like respirator approval, but there is 3 different levels of surgical masks. And I have a bag of level 3 surgical masks, and water has to do with splash protection. Okay, so a respirator should have a certain level of droplet resistance just for the wearer, for protection and from not deteriorating from just using it with your own breath. But it does not need to have barrier splash protection. And that's why a lot of times you see medical professionals, if they're using an N95, unless it is a surgical N95, right? As you said, a surgical N95, there's a couple different styles, but a lot of times you see the 3M blue ones. Those you don't need to pair it with a surgical mask unless you're just trying to go for extended use. But you'll see COVID-19 testers, other medical professionals, they'll have a non-surgical respirator N95, and then they'll double mask it with an actual leveled surgical mask. That's the one that's supposed to have liquid resistance. Okay, so that's not, you know, water your plants. Your plants need to live.
And
Don't
Steve,
be doing
just for your users, just anyone out there, when you're watching this, do not try to go out and buy a surgical N95. Leave those for people in hospitals and doctors' offices.
That is the worst one to get. That is the absolute worst of the worst to try to get at this point. It's not necessary. And actual surgical masks, you can get those on Amazon now. Those are in good supply, but you should not be taking the respirators. All the respirators I use are either the KN95s we're going to showcase here, or I have some industrial intended ones that you can pair with another mask. Those are becoming in supply, but I've seen people out in the community. I saw one lady ordering at a restaurant, and she wasn't a medical professional, and she somehow got, you know, one of the surgical medical grade N95s, and it's just like she wasn't even using it properly. She had one strap hanging below her chin, you know, so that's taking something that could help a doctor in the ICU.
Exactly.
Now, there are other things people talk about. They talk about trying to blow a candle or a match out. That's not a valid test, because I could tell you right now, I have a fake KN95, and it'll pass that, because that's really just, can any breath get, even the fake ones are going to pass that. There is one test that has an element of truth to it, and that's what we're going to go into the next segment with here. Is it should have 5 layers, the inside, the outside. One of those two has some resistance to water, as we said. Then it's got the middle 3 layers, and you've got the melt blown, where some people talk about burning that or seeing if it has a static charge. And that's true. And obviously, PowerCom will pass that test with flying colors. But the problem is, while that test is sort of valid in an attribute, that'll show you that, okay, maybe this KN95 isn't fake, but there's still a lot of inferior ones out there that are being made by startup companies due to the pandemic, right?
Correct.
And I know you and I talked about that off camera. There's a lot of these startups where they may barely meet that standard of KN95. They might not. It might be semi-legit, but they're very, very inferior, and it's not going to really meet up to the standards that we have here. And just by looking at those layers and burning the middle layers, that's not going to separate an inferior one from a very high quality one. Now, what I have here,
and like anything, as one of the great things that working for like an American manufacturer like we do, is that you come to understand that even just because you're able to buy the proper filtration mediums, doesn't mean you're going to build it right and you're going to manufacture it right. And that's where it comes to, okay, so your fire test might work, but if there's a bunch of leakage or the seams weren't like spot welded properly, then that means nothing.
Right.
You could have the best filtering medium. If it wasn't put together properly, it could be letting through like a ton of leakage. So that's kind of where, like you were just alluding to, that yes, it's accurate, but
it doesn't tell the whole story, right? So we're gonna make this really simple for you. And you know, I wholeheartedly endorse these products, and you know, getting them specifically through the distributor bonafidemask.com. But I assure you that I'm saying this, I'm not paid to say this, I'm endorsing it of my own voluntary will to do so, because I have them right here. So I have 2 of them. This is what you can expect. This is KN95. This is the traditional headband one, right?
That's the ear loop.
Sorry, ear loop. I meant to say ear loop. And then this is the headband one. And you can see on the box or on the bag, it shows you the difference, right? And they even have, the company started putting these scratch off. I know 3M has something similar to this. They have a scratch off where you can verify that each bag, even though I'm already getting them directly from their top US distributor, I can verify it on the company's website, Guangzhou PowerCom Labor Insurance Supplies, and I can verify it even further, right? And beyond all that, these respirator masks they're not just proven to be legitimate, high quality KN95, they also have been retested in the US, and these have been on the FDA's emergency use authorization since the beginning of that list, which I think the first one went out in April. Is that right?
Correct. So they were put on the first FDA EUA for the use of basically foreign filtering face piece respirators. And then not only were they on that list, when the FDA took in NPPTL, which is a part of NIOSH and the CDC,
Right.
go and test all of these masks that were on the list, they were one of the very few companies left standing that actually met the NIOSH filtration standard. And not only, I won't talk about specifics, but not only did it meet it, it exceeded it.
It exceeded it, yes. Because I know that these have, I read an article that it was closer to 99% from 95. And then I saw another gentleman on YouTube, not a guy filling it with water or burning or anything like that, but he actually had a quantitative fit testing apparatus. And he designed a whole experiment where he used a Moldex N100 as a control. And then he had all these different, he was purposely using other country respirator standards. So KF94, you know, KN95, and he did a comparison between a random KN95 mask that was, you know, found on the market online, and he did a PowerCom one. The PowerCom was like 97, so it's consistently getting higher than even N95. And for people who, a lot of people are concerned about that KN95s are looser fitting. Now, for people at home, you're going to get the same protection either way, whether you go with the headband or the ear loop model. But if you really are concerned about a tight seal, and this is why NIOSH tends to be a little stricter with the NRP respirators in the US, because they have very specific parameters with the fit testing that it must meet the filtration while moving your head in different directions, bending over, you know, they make you talk, look up, look left, look right.
Correct.
So if you want to have the tightest seal, you can always get the headband one. I have both. I've used both. I like them both. Another reason I like the headband one is because, as we were saying before, I like to double mask. I put a surgical mask over it, which are readily available now. And that's, you know, with a face shield, that's a very, very high protection setup. And I want to address one more thing, because some people are getting really confused, and it's not their fault. FDA, there's a big difference between FDA emergency use authorization, which is it's different than FDA approval, because FDA doesn't approve respirators, right? NIOSH does for US respirators, but FDA, that's not something FDA approves. The emergency use list is specific to this pandemic, but a lot of people are confused between FDA listed and what we're talking about with these masks. Now, FDA listed, and I think you said it best, so I'm going to let you say it. Why is FDA listed not a big deal?
So FDA listed, FDA registered,
right?
CE certified. These are all types of things that almost anyone off the street can get. With an FDA registration, you pay $2,000. Basically, the FDA kind of makes sure that you are a real person or entity or organization, and they provide you with registration. So they have you basically in a database, and that is it. They haven't tested anything. They haven't looked at anything. They haven't checked your supply chain. They haven't checked quality controls, nothing. So when you see all these people putting FDA listed, FDA registered all over the place, they're basically just selling people, you know, a bag of goods and passing it off as being FDA approved or FDA authorized.
Right. It could be an attempt to mislead.
Yeah. It's like most people, you know, FDA approved items, that company will always be FDA registered. An FDA registered company has nothing to do with being FDA approved.
Right. So a square is a type of rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares.
Exactly.
I didn't plan on going back to that metaphor, but I have this here, and here's the problem is I bought water filters, and I bought them online, and they actually ended up being counterfeit. But a solution was, okay, I'll just buy them at the store now. Unfortunately, with this pandemic, even buying it at a store doesn't always solve your problem. I got these being sold, they were just sold individually wrapped at a store, which I won't name names. There's no branding on this, so I can show it to you, but they engraved everything possible to make you feel that this is real. And you know what? I'm going to tell you right now, this passes some or all of those meme-like internet arbitrary tests. but I can tell just by looking at it, it's an automatic, not even inferior, automatic fake, because it actually has the FDA logo on it. FDA does not allow you to put that on there for something that's just FDA listed, registered, or even, look at PowerCom, they're not putting FDA on here. You see,
It actually, in the FDA EUA, it specifically states that you cannot utilize the FDA's logo, state that it's FDA approved. They outline it and basically say that is illegal. You can't do that. These are not approved items. You're not allowed to use the FDA logo in any way. So that would be why it's not on the packaging. But yeah.
Right. So even Guangzhou PowerCom, you know, obviously they've been doing this. They're not a startup. They've been doing this since the early 2000s, and they're a very well-known company in China. These are the good guys here, and they are following the law that, hey, we're on the emergency use FDA list, and they've been on there since the beginning, but they can't use that FDA logo. They can say, you know, you can say on your website that we're selling these that are FDA emergency use authorized. You can say that, but you don't show the logo. Here, they've engraved the logo, okay? They've got CE. They even have the Chinese standard that this is based off of.
The water test.
Right. They even put FFP2. So apparently this product has just been approved everywhere, and this is going to keep you safe flying all around the world. But let me tell you, I knew this actually has 4 layers, okay? But it's inferior quality. Why is nobody talking about looking at the quality? The PowerCom masks, the straps are such high quality that I actually was, before the headband one, I was stretching the ear loop straps in the same position, because obviously I don't want to cause any, you know, I don't want to modify a respirator, but same position. I was stretching it and wire tying it behind my head to get a tighter fit. And those straps showed no signs of wear. So even though KN95s tend to have a similar shape, similar look and feel, these straps, they're already, I can hear it, it's going to snap. They look like strings. They don't even look like straps. And let me tell you, this thing is, it's flimsy, but some people might think this is real because it's got the FDA logo on it and it passes some arbitrary tests. Do you really think that your tests at home, which aren't even really tests, are really any matchup to NPPTL saying these reach 99%? You know, it's not. So the best thing that people can do is, if you want to get, which I'm an advocate for doing, get protection that doesn't take it from healthcare people on the front lines, but that also doesn't mean that you need to rely on just a homemade cloth mask that might do some slow the spread action, but how much is it really going to protect you in a higher risk situation? These are going to be your best bet. And you can get them on bonafidemask.com. And it's at a really affordable price. They're sold in packs of 10. And I believe that you guys have you have some kind of discount where if they buy a certain number. You want to talk a little bit about their buying options?
So because we are a manufacturer, we've always utilized bulk wholesale pricing. And that especially helps organizations, not even just healthcare organizations. We work with, you know, schools, daycares, corporations, companies, local mom and pops. And because they're interacting with other people on a daily basis, they need more. So we made it so, all right, the more you buy, we're going to help you out, and the more you save. And that's also part of one of the crusades my own boss went on, where when we got into this, he thought it was ridiculous that there were so many people taking advantage in terms of pricing and just price gouging. So he went out of his way to not just become the distributor for PowerCom, but then start, you know, working as hard as possible to get sales so we could then drive the price down. So we would actually get a new price, a better price, because we were buying more and people were ordering from us, and we would just lower it. We would just, you know, be like, all right, well, we want to make sure that we can get these masks to people at an affordable price. So we would just continue lowering it as we got a better price. While a lot of people, this is probably the same people as their water test guy, just trying to make a fast, quick buck, no matter who they're hurting or what they're doing. And that, like I said, that's one of my boss's missions, is to try to get good products, good masks to the right people at the right times.
I love it. I love it. That's a great mission. We're going to give you the link in the description of this video to bonafidemask.com. And I encourage people to get them now And
We'll even give you a discount code. How about that? That's the one
that's
good thing
excellent.
about being the director of marketing. You can put in just BFM5 and it'll be another 5% off.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And that was not something we talked about, so I really appreciate that. I want to show people as the last thing what it looks like. This is the headband one, but like I said, both are great choices. I use them both now. This one I've already opened, so I just want to show what it looks like. And I noticed that this is the newer product, and so it actually doesn't have ingrained, I mean, it has all the standards, the important stuff, but it doesn't say bonafidemask.com. It still says made in China. Whereas the ear loop one, but either way, I mean, it's the same. And they come.
There's a mixture of them. So some of them do, some of them don't. We do so much business with them and so much work with them, and we really do like to promote their brand. So they actually kind of did that to surprise us once. They're like, we made a bunch and we put bona fide masks on the side.
That's so cool.
Right, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because these are respirators, you know, and I think a lot of people use the ear loop ones and they just put it on without thinking too much about it. But because these are respirator masks, even though they're not the US standard, I always advocate and educate people to take that one extra step to use it appropriately, to really make sure you're going to get as close as possible or the full amount of protection that it will provide for your face. So when you get them in the package, they come kind of semi-closed folded like this. When somebody goes to put one of these on, to don one of these, you first want to, I'll show you the straps too, very high quality. You just want to unfold it. And then for this one, if you're, you know, you have the ear loop one, you just put it, you know, over your ears. Put the top strap on first, okay? And a lot of people, they get this confused. When you're using the headband, whether it's N95, KN95, the like, this is not supposed to be equivalent to the top ear loop strap. It's actually supposed to go a little bit higher. Make sure it's straight on the crown of your head, okay? And then I'm gonna make sure it's flush on my face. I'm gonna put it level with the base around my neck. You get it to about here. And then the other thing I want to say is that I've seen some people do that. You wanna use 2 fingers and mold it with about medium force, mold it to the shape of your nose. Go back and forth a couple times. And I like to go all the way down to the cheekbone and really just make sure. And you want to get it to the point where when you breathe in and out, you don't feel any air coming out around your eyes. And then you breathe and you just do what's called a user seal check. You do 1, make sure there's no air leaking here. 2, no air leaking at the bottom. And then you cover it without pushing on it. You just cover it and you inhale sharply, and you should basically deflate, and you should feel that negative pressure in there. And then when you breathe back out, you shouldn't feel any air leaking. If you do, you can always adjust the position and try to get a tighter seal. And there you have it. And I wanted to show people that you can see how it moves in and out as I'm breathing. And usually you don't see that with a surgical type mask, a cloth mask, well, certainly not a cloth mask, but that's because this has got a tight seal, which is one of the main reasons that a respirator works as well, in addition to having the right number of layers and the proper type of filtering fabric. And when it's properly sealed, your glasses are not going to excessively fog up. It could be a little bit when you breathe out, but when you breathe in, it's going to pull closer to your face. I want to show people how to take this off, and this applies to anything, because I see a lot of people, you know, when you adjust it on the front, you got to assume this is contaminated, right? And then you have to wash your hands. So the best way to do this, if I was using this and I just came back maybe from a doctor's appointment, and obviously I don't have COVID, so I'd rather not get it. I like to start from the bottom strap, pull it closely, avoiding your eyes. Don't touch the front. Do the top strap, and then just back out of it and drop it. And there you go. Do hand hygiene. You're good to go. And like I said, I could pair that with a surgical mask, surgical type mask, and a face shield, and you're good to go. I mean,
I want to thank you just because, like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Absolutely.
Whenever we find people that are fighting the good fight to try to really, because this stuff matters a lot. Like these are things that people are buying to protect themselves.
Right.
And without the proper information, like you just said, you could grab anything. You could grab something that looks kind of real. And it isn't. You run home, like you said, and throw a water test instead of watering your plants, and you know, all of a sudden you think you're protected and you're not. So I thank you, for making sure that people know kind of what the deal is, what's going on, what's real and what's not real.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for, you and Bill for coming on, agreeing to come on the show and talk about your product. I love to have different perspectives. A lot of what we do is mindset. We also do, coping, obviously, Coping 20, but we also get people from all different industries talk about how the pandemic has affected them and how we're moving forward together. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I hope that people will buy these respirator masks to protect themselves and their family. And for everybody else, please do me the biggest favor you can, which is get some of these masks and share this. It's always a good thing to share good information, to spread good information. Spreading SARS-CoV-2 is bad, but spreading positivity is always a good thing. So please take care of yourself. And I hope you've enjoyed episode 16, the return of Coping 20, formerly Coping with COVID. Please subscribe, please share, and take care of yourself.